Have you ever walked into a room and felt invisible? Not ignored in the casual sense, but truly unseen, as if the world is buzzing around you while you fade quietly into the background. Everyone else seems to move in clusters, laughing, chatting, connecting. Their phones light up with notifications, group messages, last-minute plans, while yours sits in your pocket like a stone. In those moments, a question can sting harder than anything else. What's wrong with me? It's a painful thought. Loneliness isn't just an empty seat beside you or a weekend with no plans. It's that voice in your head whispering that maybe, just maybe, you're failing where others succeed, that you are the outsider, that something in you is broken. But here's the truth. Lean in and listen closely. Your solitude might be your greatest strength. Yes, read that again. The very thing you've been taught to see as a flaw could be the foundation of your power. And today, we're going to unpack that. The flip nobody sees coming society doesn't celebrate solitude. It celebrates noise. It glorifies followers, likes, invitations, and endless chatter. It tells you that the more friends you have, the more valuable you are. That being popular equals being worthy. But what if everything you've been told is upside down? What if having fewer friends, or even none at all, doesn't mean you're failing, but that you're actually rare? That your quiet life isn't proof of weakness, but a clue that you're living at a depth most people never reach. Let me take you back to some of the greatest minds in history. Albert Einstein once said, "Solitude was essential for his creativity." He needed silence, time, and space to think. Surrounded by too much noise, he would lose the clarity that gave birth to his genius. The Stoics, thinkers like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca, taught the same truth thousands of years ago. Marcus wrote that a person who is at peace with themselves is never truly alone. Epictetus warned his students that the wrong company corrupts character faster than you realize. Seneca reminded us that it's better to walk alone than to follow a crowd rushing toward emptiness. Do you see the pattern? The greatest thinkers, leaders, and creators didn't run from solitude. They embraced it. They saw the world clearly because they weren't drowning in noise. So let me plant this seed in your mind. Maybe the reason your phone doesn't buzz all the time, maybe the reason you don't click with shallow crowds, isn't because something is missing in you. It's because something rare is present in you. The pain of loneliness versus the power of solitude. Let's be real for a second. Loneliness hurts. It burns in your chest when you scroll through social media and see people laughing at dinners you weren't invited to. It aches when you want to share good news but realize you don't know who to call. But here's the crucial distinction. Loneliness and solitude are not the same. Loneliness is the pain of being disconnected from others. Solitude is the power of being connected with yourself. Most people run from solitude because it forces them to face the one person they spend their whole lives avoiding, themselves. Think about it. How many people do you know who can't sit in silence for even 10 minutes without pulling out their phone? How many run from one plan to the next, desperate for noise, not because they love the company, but because they're terrified of their own thoughts? That's not freedom, that's dependence. But if you can stand in silence and feel complete, if you can walk into a room alone and not feel small, that is power. That is emotional control. That is self-respect. And that's the first truth we're uncovering today. Solitude isn't a punishment. It's a training ground. The conversation that doesn't fit. Let me paint a picture. You're sitting at a table with a group of people. The talk is light, surface level, filled with gossip about who's dating who, complaints about work, or debates over which Netflix show is better. You try to steer the conversation somewhere deeper, maybe about a book you read, a philosophy you've been reflecting on, or a goal you're working toward. But as soon as the words leave your mouth, the air shifts. Someone makes a joke, someone checks their phone, the conversation quickly changes. You sit back realizing your thoughts were too heavy for their surface. That sting you feel, that's not failure. That's evidence. Evidence that your mind doesn't live in shallow waters. Evidence that you crave depth, honesty, and loyalty. And here's the truth. Depth doesn't thrive in shallow circles. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If your thoughts are rich, reflective, intentional, then shallow groups will never feel like home. It's not that you're broken, it's that you carry a different frequency. What if fewer friends means higher standards? Here's a question that will flip your perspective. What if the lack of friends in your life isn't about rejection, but about standards? Think about it. Anyone can fill their contacts list with hundreds of names. Anyone can surround themselves with noise. But you don't settle. You'd rather walk alone than waste energy on hollow connections. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. Seneca said, "Associate with people who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you can make better." He didn't say, "Collect as many acquaintances as possible." He said, "Seek the few who add value." So if your life looks quiet right now, don't see it as emptiness. See it as filtration. You are filtering out what doesn't align with your values. Why society gets it backward. Here's where things get tricky. The modern world worships visibility. The more you're seen, the more you're valued. The more followers you have, the more important you must be. But let's challenge that idea for a second. If popularity truly equaled happiness, then why do so many celebrities, people with millions of fans, confess to feeling isolated and depressed? Why do some of the loudest, most connected people struggle with addiction, anxiety, or burnout? Because visibility isn't the same as connection. Noise isn't the same as fulfillment. You don't need 100 people laughing at your jokes. You need one person who listens to your truth. You don't need a crowded room. You need a circle, no matter how small, where silence feels safe. And until you find that, solitude is not your enemy, it's your teacher. What you haven't realized yet, here's something you may not have realized. The fact that you feel out of place in shallow spaces is actually proof that you're growing. Most people will never feel that discomfort because they've adjusted themselves to fit the crowd. They dim their brightness to blend in. They laugh at jokes they don't find funny. They settle for conversations that don't challenge them. But you feel the gap. You feel the mismatch. And that awareness is painful, yes, but it's also powerful. It means your standards are alive. It means your soul is refusing to shrink. And here's the paradox. The very thing that makes you feel like an outsider today will be the thing that draws the right people to you tomorrow. Because depth attracts depth, but slowly where we're going. So here's what we're going to do in this journey together. We're going to break down 4 powerful insights about what the lack of friends really means. And with each one, I'm going to show you why solitude might just be the hidden advantage you've been overlooking. We'll talk about why depth doesn't thrive in shallow waters, why solitude is the training ground of self-mastery, why quality will always outweigh quantity, and why the right people show up in the right season. Along the way, we'll pull wisdom from Stoic philosophy, from history's greatest minds, and from real-life stories that mirror your own. And by the end, my goal is simple, that you'll never see solitude as weakness again. Instead, you'll see it as proof that your life, your mind, and your values are operating at a rare level. So lean in. Stay with me, because what you're about to discover may just change how you see yourself forever. Depth versus shallow relationships. Have you ever felt like you're speaking a different language when you're around certain people? You're talking about ideas, dreams, or personal growth, and they're talking about the latest celebrity breakup or who embarrassed themselves at last night's party. It's like trying to plant a tree in sand. No matter how much effort you put in, the roots can't take hold. That's what it feels like to crave depth in a world that mostly survives on the shallow. And let's be real, this gap is one of the main reasons people who value growth, wisdom, and authenticity often feel like they don't fit in. The illusion of many versus the reality of few. Here's a wild truth. You can be surrounded by dozens of people and still feel completely alone. Why? Because presence doesn't equal connection. Imagine being at a crowded party. Music blasting, drinks flowing, people laughing. You're in the middle of it all, but your chest feels hollow. You smile, nod, laugh when expected, but inside you're drained. Now compare that to sitting with one person over coffee, talking for hours about life, dreams, fears, and everything in between. No background noise, no pretending, just raw connection. Which one fills you more? Which one lingers in your heart days later? Exactly. Depth outweighs numbers every single time. So when you look at your life and see few friends, don't fall into the trap of comparison. You don't need many. You need real. The danger of shallow circles. Here's the trap. Shallow circles often look safe because they're familiar. You laugh at surface jokes. You go along with small talk. You stay just enough to avoid feeling left out. But here's the cost. Shallow circles slowly erode your depth. It's like eating junk food every day. It fills you for a moment, but it leaves you weak, tired, and malnourished. Seneca said it best. What's the use of countless friends? You can't count them if they're not counted on. Read that again. 1,000 acquaintances aren't worth a single person who truly has your back. So if you're feeling frustrated by not fitting in with larger groups, maybe that's not a failure. Maybe that's protection. Maybe life is steering you away from circles that would dilute you. Why you don't fit in, and why that's a gift. Let me ask you this. How many times have you sat in a group conversation, tried to speak your truth and then felt brushed off? It stings. But here's the reframe. You don't fit in because you weren't built to shrink. Think about it. A square peg doesn't fit in a round hole. Does that mean the square peg is broken? No, it just means it was designed for something else. You were designed for conversations that matter. You were designed for friendships where silence isn't awkward but comforting. You were designed for spaces where your growth isn't threatening, but celebrated. And those spaces are rare. That's why you don't stumble into them every weekend. That's why your phone isn't buzzing non-stop. Your solitude isn't proof that you're failing. It's proof that you're waiting for the right soil. The Stoic lens on depth. The Stoics had a clear view of relationships. Better to have one wise friend than 100 fools, Epictetus warned. Avoid fraternizing with people who are not likely to improve you. Why? Because energy is contagious. Spend enough time in shallow circles and their habits, fears, and distractions rub off on you. But the opposite is also true. Find one person who challenges you, who lives with integrity, who speaks truth, and suddenly your own growth multiplies. This is why Stoicism places such high value on discernment. It's not about rejecting people in arrogance. It's about protecting your mind, because your mind is the root of everything. Your peace, your decisions, your future. The friend who changed everything. I'll give you an example. A young man once told me he spent years feeling out of place. He had friends, sure, but the friendships were built on drinking, gossip, and complaining. He always felt heavy afterward. Then one day, he met someone different. This person didn't gossip, they listened. They didn't complain, they encouraged. They didn't laugh at his dreams. They asked deeper questions about them. That one friendship shifted his entire life. He started reading more, working on himself, building confidence, and taking risks he had avoided for years. All it took was one person to replace the noise of 10 others. And that's the lesson. Depth doesn't need quantity. It needs alignment, the shift in perspective. So here's the shift I want you to hold on to. If you feel like you don't have many friends, it might not be because you're lacking. It might be because you're filtering out the shallow so that the deep can find its way in. You're refusing to settle for less than real. And that is a strength most people never develop. So now we've drawn the first line in the sand. Shallow circles drain you, depth fills you. And the reason you feel disconnected is not weakness, but wisdom. But that's only the beginning. Because solitude isn't just about relationships, it's also about who you become when you stand alone. And that brings us to the next truth. Solitude is self-mastery. Stay with me, because this next part is where loneliness transforms into power. Solitude as self-mastery. Here's a question for you. When was the last time you were truly alone? No phone, no music, no distractions, just you and your own thoughts. Most people can't handle even 5 minutes of that. Silence feels like suffocation. They reach for the screen, the playlist, the endless scroll. Because being alone means facing themselves. And that's the scariest mirror of all. But here's the paradox. If you can learn to master solitude, you can master life. Why the strongest people are comfortable alone. Let's flip the script for a moment. What if the ability to stand alone isn't weakness? It's the highest form of strength. Think about it. If you can sit with your own mind without panic, if you can be content without constant validation, if you can make decisions without a crowd cheering you on, then you are untouchable, because most people crumble without external approval. They need the likes, the group, the applause. Without it, they feel invisible, but you don't need a crowd to know your worth. That's not loneliness, that's power. Marcus Aurelius said it simply, nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. Your solitude is not an empty room. It's a fortress, the training ground of solitude. Think of solitude like the gym. It's where strength is built, not displayed. When you're alone, you discover who you are without filters. You notice your fears. You confront your insecurities. You face the unedited version of yourself. And yes, it's uncomfortable at first. But that discomfort is growth in disguise. Ask yourself, can I enjoy my own company? Can I set goals and stay disciplined without someone watching? Can I keep promises to myself when no one else is holding me accountable? If the answer is yes, then you've tapped into a level of self-mastery most people never reach. The Stoic perspective on standing alone. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus reminded his students, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Why? Because growth often requires breaking from the crowd, standing apart, choosing solitude when the masses chase comfort. To live with wisdom means you will often walk alone, not forever, but for seasons. And instead of fearing those seasons, the Stoics welcomed them. Seneca even said, true happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. That's the essence of solitude. To be full in the moment without needing noise to complete you. The athlete who learned to train. Alone, let me share a story. There was an athlete who struggled with discipline. As long as his teammates were around, he trained hard. But the moment he was alone, he skipped workouts. One season, he got injured and couldn't train with the group. At first he spiraled, lazy days, excuses, frustration. But slowly he realized this was his test. Could he build strength when no one was watching? So he started showing up alone, quietly, no applause, no teammates, just him and the grind. By the time he returned, his coaches were stunned. He wasn't just healed, he was stronger than ever. Because he had learned the hardest skill of all, self-mastery in solitude. That's the lesson for us too. Anyone can perform when the crowd is watching, but the ones who train in silence, they carry unshakable strength. The superpower nobody talks about. Here's the superpower nobody talks about. If you can be alone and content, you become magnetic. Why? Because most people reek of neediness. They cling, they chase, they demand validation. But someone who radiates calm in solitude, that person draws others naturally. People are curious about the one who doesn't beg for attention. They want to know your secret, and your secret is simple. You've built peace within. Solitude teaches emotional control. Let's go deeper. Solitude is also where you learn emotional control. When you're alone, no one's triggering you, no one's flattering you, no one's pushing your buttons. It's just you. That's where you notice your thought patterns clearly. You see how anger rises. You notice how anxiety whispers. You recognize how self-doubt creeps in, and in noticing you gain control. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations not as a book for others, but as notes to himself, alone. That's how he trained his mind. Every night he'd reflect, where did I act with virtue? Where did I fail? What can I improve tomorrow? That practice, done in solitude, shaped him into one of history's most respected leaders. So ask yourself, how often do you pause to reflect? How often do you check in with your mind? Not your notifications, not your friends, but your own soul. Because that habit is where peace is built. Quality over quantity. In friendships. Let me ask you something real. Would you rather sit at a table with 20 people laughing at shallow jokes, or sit with just one person who truly understands you, where even the silence feels safe? Most people chase the crowd. They think more friends, more value. But the truth? The wrong crowd can drain you faster than loneliness ever could. And here's the secret. Your short contact list might actually be proof that you're living wisely. The lie of more is better. We live in a culture that worships numbers. More likes, more followers, more friends. But here's the thing, numbers can be empty. 10,000 followers can feel lonelier than one loyal friend. Seneca said it best, associate with people who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you can make better. Translation, don't measure friendship by how many faces you can tag in a photo. Measure it by who makes you wiser, stronger, more grounded. So if your circle is small, don't panic. It's not a curse. It's a filter, the weight of shallow connections. Think about it. Shallow connections are light at first, easy to make, easy to laugh with. But maintaining them, exhausting. You end up drained because you're constantly performing. You hide your real struggles. You smile when you don't feel like it. You play a role. Now compare that with one deep connection. No performance, no mask, just honesty. With that one person, you can be silent without feeling awkward. You can be weak without being judged. You can be yourself without fear. That single connection carries more weight than 20 surface-level ones combined. The dinner table test. Here's a simple test. Picture two scenes. At one table, 20 people are shouting over each other, laughing at jokes no one will remember tomorrow. At another table, there's just one person, and the conversation goes deep. Dreams, fears, purpose. Which table feels like home to you? If you chose the second, congratulations. You're not missing out. You're filtering out. The Stoic lens. Why few is stronger. The Stoics knew that quantity was never the goal. They warned that the wrong company corrupts faster than solitude ever could. Epictetus told his students, the key is to keep company only with people who uplift you, whose presence calls forth your best. Think about that. If someone's presence doesn't pull you higher, then what are they doing? Keeping you stuck. Your fewer friendships don't mean you're lacking. They mean you've refused to sell your soul cheaply. The man with 500 contacts. Here's a story you might relate to. A man had over 500 contacts in his phone. Every weekend he was out, parties, dinners, events. His life looked full, but one night disaster struck. A family emergency. He needed help. So he scrolled through that endless list and called people. Guess how many showed up? Not 500, not 50, just one. And that night he realized the truth. 499 names were noise. One person was gold. So let me ask you, if your world collapsed tonight, who would show up? That answer tells you who your real friends are. Why the crowd isn't always comfort. Here's something wild. Being in the wrong crowd can feel lonelier than being alone. Have you ever been surrounded by people and still felt invisible? That's the ache of quantity without quality. It's like drinking salt water. It looks like it will quench your thirst, but it only makes you more dehydrated. Shallow friendships can look like connection, but they leave you emptier than before. Quality creates legacy. Here's why this matters. Quality friendships don't just make your days better, they shape your life. A real friend challenges you when you're wrong. A real friend encourages you when you're weak. A real friend celebrates you without envy. One authentic bond can redirect your entire path. That's why the Stoics didn't chase crowds. They valued impact over image. So if your life looks quiet now, it's not emptiness. It's preparation. You're leaving space for the friendships that actually matter. Why fewer means stronger. So let's close this chapter with truth. Numbers mean nothing if they're empty. The wrong crowd is lonelier than no crowd at all. A single authentic connection is worth more than 1,000 shallow ones. If your circle is small, don't let comparison steal your peace. You're not behind. You're focused. And here's the best part. When you stop chasing quantity, you give yourself room for the right quality. And those friendships, they don't just fill your time, they transform your life. But that raises the next big question. Why do the right people take so long to show up? And how can you trust the timing? That's where we're heading in the next section. The seasons of life and why the right people appear at the right time. The seasons of life and why the right people take time. Here's a question that stings. Why does it feel like everyone else finds their people so quickly while you're still walking alone? You see the groups, the cliques, the lifelong best friends since childhood. Meanwhile, you wonder if something's wrong with you. But what if the delay isn't a curse? It's timing. Nature's reminder. Everything has its season. Look at nature. Flowers don't bloom in winter. Fruit doesn't ripen in a day. The ocean doesn't rush its tides. So why do we expect friendships, the deepest, most meaningful ones, to show up instantly? The Stoics reminded us again and again, what's outside your control is not yours to obsess over. You can't force people into your life. You can't demand loyalty on your schedule. You can only stay authentic and trust that in time, the right people will notice your light. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What flows from nature comes back to the source." In other words, when you stay true to your nature, the right people circle back to you. The patience of deep roots. Think about oak trees. They grow slow. For years, their roots go deeper before their branches rise higher. That's you right now. The quiet seasons, the solitude, the waiting. It's your roots digging deep. You're stabilizing so that when friendships come, they don't topple you, Shallow friendships are fast food, quick, easy, forgettable. Real friendships are slow-cooked, steady, rich, unforgettable, so don't resent the waiting.